UFC middleweight division, every single fight to make next. Now, there's a lot of fights to be made, but there's a lot of fights that have already been made. I mean, if you look at the top 10 of this middleweight division, and even the whole entire top 15, there is a lot of fights that have already been made. So we're going to start from the bottom in the number 15, Edmen Shahbazyan. Who should Edmen Shahbazyan fight next? Considering he's on a very, very bad losing streak, he's probably going to have to fight someone outside of the UFC rankings. He lost to Derek Brunson by a TKO. He lost to Jack Hermanson by decision. Then he lost to Nasser by TKO. That is the number 4 guy, the number 7 guy, and then the number 11 guy. Muniz has a fight. Tavares has a fight. Weidman is kind of still coming back from the injury that he had against Uriah Hall in his last one. So it's very clear. Edmen Shahbazyan needs to fight someone outside of this UFC rankings. And there's a few guys that do stick out to me. Anthony Hernandez is one of them. Another one would be the winner of Joaquin Buckley and Albert Duraev. That one does look like a very good one. Some other guys, I mean, Gregory Rodriguez, Kyle Dawkins, Phil Halls, they don't really interest me as much. Chris Curtis could possibly be a guy to get that top 15 fight next, but I think Chris Curtis needs one more good fight. Hernandez probably needs one fight as well. Rodolfo Vieira and then Josh Fremd. He did lose to Kevin Holland as well as Marcus Perez, so it's tough to say who he should fight next. I'm leaning the winner of Joaquin Buckley, Albert Duraev, as of right now. But it's very, very tough because there's so many guys that can definitely get this fight inside of the top 15. But I'm going to be leaning towards that one. The winner of Joaquin Buckley and Albert Duraev taking on Edmen Shahbazyan. That'd be a banger fight right there. So first fight to make in the heavyweight division, Edmen Shahbazyan. I know I'm going to spell it wrong. Shahbazyan. I don't know. We'll try to spell it as best as I can. Versus winner of Albert Duraev versus Joaquin Buckley. Personally, I think Joaquin Buckley would actually win that fight. And I think a fight with him versus Edmen Shahbazyan would be a great way for Joaquin to enter that top 15. And once Joaquin Buckley enters that top 15, we have a crazy battle between none other than Chris Curtis and Joaquin Buckley. Boy, would I want to see that fight. If Joaquin can beat Albert Duraev, then he can go out there and beat Edmen Shahbazyan. And we have Chris Curtis get one win of his own. A fight with Joaquin Buckley and Chris Curtis is absolute fireworks. And I would very, very much want to see that fight. Chris Weidman coming back. I don't think he's going to get one of the other top 15 guys at the moment. He possibly could. There's plenty of guys that would be willing to fight Chris Weidman at this stage in his career coming off that injury, but he's most likely has to fight someone outside of the rankings and not very clear on a guy that he should fight next, because I mean, Krzysztof Jotko could be a good one. Chris Curtis could definitely be a good one, like I was talking about. Chris Curtis, Krzysztof Jotko, Anthony Hernandez. It's tough. It's one of those three for Chris Weidman. It'd have to be one of the guys that does not have the best wrestling out of all of them, but they all have good wrestling. Krzysztof Jotko's got very good takedown defense. Curtis has pretty decent takedown defense. Hernandez has good jiu-jitsu to fall back on. Honestly, I like a fight with Chris Curtis. He's beaten guys in his last fight. Phil Halls and then Brendan Allen. TKO in both of them. Jotko, good wins. Misha Sirgunov and Gerald Meerschaert, but not good enough to where he would get a top 15 fight. I think maybe a Krzysztof Jotko versus Anthony Hernandez, then the winner of that one gets a top 15 fight. But for right now, I'm liking, if Chris Curtis can go out there and beat Rodolfo Vieira, I'm liking Chris Curtis fighting against Chris Weidman in the comeback. I know a lot of you guys might be thinking, no, Chris Weidman is going to get knocked out in that fight. Very possible, but Chris Weidman is a very legit wrestler, so he could definitely win that fight. Chris Weidman versus Chris Curtis if he beats Rodolfo Vieira. So that would be the fight I would want to see there. I mean, Chris Weidman, there's plenty of fights out there he can take. He's not going to get a fight in the top 15. I don't think he wants a Khrushchev Jotko fight. That's not a really big enough name. There's not really that many big enough names on the unranked scene in the middleweight division, but Chris Curtis seems like a very, very good fight in my opinion. Andre Muniz, we already know he does have a fight upcoming, taking on Uriah Hall. He's probably going to win that fight in my opinion. We have Brad Tavares, who is going to be fighting Drihu Duplessis. That's going to be a really good fight. Nasruddin Imavov is an interesting one. I think they should just reschedule the fight that was originally supposed to happen. It was supposed to be Nasruddin Imavov versus Kelvin Gastelum, so we're going to keep that one the same. I did like that fight first off when it was first announced, so we're going to keep that one the same. Kelvin Gastelum versus Nasruddin Imavov. I really, really do like that fight. Two guys with very good wrestling and grappling with really good striking as well. They're both very, very well-rounded. The new versus not really that old. I mean, Kelvin Gastelum isn't necessarily the oldest guy in this middleweight division. He's only 30 years old at the time. So if he can win this fight, puts him right back in the talk of maybe climbing up the middleweight rankings and getting maybe another fight with Adesanya. We never do know. After that one, gets interesting. We do have Nasruddin versus Kelvin, which I think should happen. Uriah Hall's already fighting Andre Muniz. Darren Till's already fighting Jack Hermanson. Paulo Costa is already fighting Luke Rockhold. Sean Strickland is already fighting the unranked Alex Pereira. Derek Brunson is there. Marvin Vettori is there. Derek Cannonier is fighting Adesanya, so we only really have Derek Brunson, Marvin Vettori, and Robert Whittaker, because I do believe the Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori fight was canceled for whatever reason. I'm not too sure why, but we're going to reschedule that one, because I don't know why it was canceled. I think that was the perfect fight to make. Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori in the middleweight division, and then that really leaves you with only Derek Brunson. Very, very tough to figure out who this guy's going to fight next, because he beat guys like Darren Till, Kevin Holland, Edmund Shabazian, Ian Heinisch, and then before that beat Elias Theodorou. He did lose to Jerry Cannonier recently, so he's not going to get an Adesanya, Robert Whittaker, maybe a Sean Strickland if he loses. So honestly, like that, the loser of Sean Strickland versus Alex Pereira versus Derek Brunson, because you're not going to give him, I mean, you could give him Andre Muniz. That's a legit fight there. Now, it's coming between one of those. The loser of Pereira, Sean Strickland, or the winner of Andre Muniz versus Uriah Hall. I'm going to lean more towards Andre Muniz right there. I'm going to go the winner of Andre Muniz, Uriah Hall versus Derek Brunson. That would be a very, very solid fight. So, Derek Brunson versus winner of Andre Muniz versus Uriah Hall. Would be a very, very solid fight. Grappler versus wrestler. If we were to see Andre Muniz versus Derek Brunson, would be a very, very solid fight. So, the fights I do have added onto the list is going to be Edmund Shabazian, if I'm going to spell that right, I really don't know how to, versus the winner of Albert Duraev and Joaquin Buckley. Kelvin Gastelum versus Nasruddin Imavov. Chris Weidman versus Chris Curtis, if he does happen to beat Rodolfo Vieira. Derek Brunson versus the winner of Andre Muniz and Uriah Hall. Robert Whittaker versus Marvin Vettori. And the fights that are already scheduled: Adesanya versus Cannonier, Sean Strickland versus Alex Pereira, Jack Hermanson, Darren Till, Andre Muniz, Uriah Hall, Brad Tavares, Drihu Duplessis, Chris Curtis, Rodolfo Vieira, and then, yeah, that's pretty much it for the top 15. Those are the fights I think should be made next in the UFC middleweight division. Make sure you guys like the video, subscribe, and we'll see you in the next one. Let's go.